Today on Uncommon Sense, join me as I interview a special guest. If you've ever wished that somebody would make more movies out of Chesterton's novels, well, somebody is, and today we're going to talk to him. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton. I am Grettelyn Darkey, your host, and I am happy to be joined today by Ryan Whitaker. Hi, how are you today, Ryan?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, if you wouldn't mind, I think the best way to introduce you to our audience is to let you introduce yourself. If you wouldn't mind just giving a brief introduction of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I am Ryan Whitaker. I am a filmmaker. I have spent my life trying to make movies. I always say to people that I spend a lot more time trying to make things than actually making them, which is the sad reality of the movie business. But feature films, TV series. I made a film a couple years ago called Surprised by Oxford that I shot in Oxford, England. It was a great experience based on the memoir by Carolyn Weber. I've just spent a year and a half working on a new TV series called The Pendragon Cycle for the Daily Wire, which is a big scripted King Arthur fantasy show based on the novels by Stephen Lawhead. And I am in the early stages of a project based on G.K. Chesterton's novel, The Ball and the Cross. So that's a very exciting project and one that's very special to me. And then in my other life, so to speak, I write books under the name Ryan Whitaker Smith. And I've written a couple books of prayers based on the Psalms and also a Christmas devotional based on the writings of Chesterton called Winter Fire that came out last Christmas.
Yeah, we are familiar with Winter Fire. It's exciting. It's great to see just more Chestertonians doing Chesterton things. But if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about how you encountered Chesterton and what your draw to him is.
Well, I went to a very small Christian classical high school in my hometown of Franklin, Tennessee. And at some point, my English teacher assigned The Man Who Was Thursday as required reading for our class. And I'm a little ashamed to admit it. I'm not even sure I read the entire book at the time. You know, I have a lot of regrets about high school, and I think I could have appreciated lots of things more. But because it was kind of an embarrassment of riches, the school that I was at. But at some point after that, I think that was when I sort of became aware of Chesterton. But it wasn't until later that his writing sort of grabbed me. At some point, I bought a copy of the collected Father Brown stories, and it sort of sat on my shelf for a while. And one day, for some reason, I picked it up and decided to read the first story, and then I was just sort of immediately taken by it and sort of consumed that whole volume, and then went on to read. I can't say I read everything because I'm still reading. He wrote so much. I think it'd be very difficult to read everything that he wrote, but certainly went on to read, Orthodoxy and Everlasting Man and Man Alive and The Ball and the Cross, and a lot of those titles. So that began this relationship with Chesterton that continues to this day.
Wonderful. Well, The Ball and the Cross is one of my personal favorites. I'm a fencer, so
me too.
I love.
Are you?
Yeah, I love the sword fighting. It's so I don't know.
Well, the irony is that they don't really do much sword fighting.
I know.
they try.
Yeah. Yes, they try.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert! It doesn't actually happen. But so what drew you to The Ball and the Cross specifically, and why? How did you get somebody interested in that? What was the story with that? If you can share.
Well, as you know, Chesterton didn't write a lot of fiction, but all of the fiction that he did write is kind of extraordinary. and in different ways. I don't know. I think The Ball and the Cross, to me, it's always been one of my favorites because I think it's such a witty and fun concept.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the idea of this sort of zealous Catholic character, engaging in a duel to the death with this vehement atheist. It's
Yeah.
sort of the idea pitches itself. I've found, like, as soon as you just kind of pitch the basic conceit of the story, people just immediately start laughing because it's so
Mm-hmm.
absurd and ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, of all of his novels, that was the one that felt like the most adaptable to me
Mm.
because the concept is so sort of easy to latch onto. Um, so yeah, I mean, that I wrote the first draft of the script probably 3 or 4 years ago now,
Mm.
and in this business, you have to have multiple projects you're working on all the time because it's
Mm-hmm.
just, you never know what's going to move forward. But this one is still very near and dear to my heart, and I still have a lot of hope for it. So I'm hoping in the next year or two that this will finally be made. It's in the movie business. It's all about timing and the configuration of the team and the cast. It's just you're trying to capture magic in a bottle, and you have to have the right set of circumstances. But I very much believe in it, and I think it would be a not just an incredibly fun project to make because it is so silly,
Mm-hmm.
um, but also I think it really has something important to say to sort of the cultural moment that we're in.
Yeah, agreed. Bit of a spoiler alert, but just the way that they sort of become friends um through this. It's not a fight really, but like, they're trying to fight, but they're also dialoguing
Yeah,
through the whole thing. Um, and there's that hint of conversion at the end for the atheist. Sorry, everybody, spoilers. But just yeah, I think that's extremely important. Where we are today, we're so polarized, and we need more films and TV showing people engaging with each other, and in a real way, and not just yelling at each other, across a space that they're not never gonna cross.
yeah, that's right. And the genius, of course, of the story, as you've just touched on, is the idea that these two characters find who are so diametrically opposed in so many ways find common ground in the idea that they both believe in something enough that they're willing to die for it.
Mm.
And I think that's really again very applicable sort of to the moment that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
I think ironically we live in a time where people pretend like they have very strong convictions, but I'm not sure that they really do. It's sort of they seem to change day to day,
Mm.
and so that idea is actually somewhat novel, I think,
Mm-hmm.
in the modern world as it was in 1910.
Mm. Yeah, like what would you actually die for? What would you
Right.
want to fight for? It's Sadly, it seems like a short list for a lot of people. And like you
Yeah.
said, it doesn't seem like most people have. I don't think a lot of people think down to like the fundamentals anymore. They just sort of they almost hold ideas like trends. And it's kind of sad because it, it's a shallowness of life that is just sad. You got to go deeper to have a really rich and true life. But
No, that's so true. I was just in London the other day with my friend Michael Culkin, the actor who was in my film Surprise by Oxford, and
mm,
we like to get together and have deep conversations whenever I'm in town. But I said to him, I don't understand how people go about their daily lives not asking the big questions.
mm,
And the sad truth is that a lot of people, that is how a lot of people live. But I don't understand. I can't wrap my head around that idea of not being sort of obsessed with the questions of why am I here and what does all
mm.
of this mean and so people do go about their lives not spending much time thinking about ultimate things.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think is part of why Chesterton is also so important, because that's all he seemed to talk about. Even when it seemed
Well, he
like
has
he,
that great. What's the great quote about the only thing worth talking about is politics and religion?
yes, exactly. Yeah. And even when he seems like he's talking about little boring things, he's really talking about big, important things all the time. Yeah, wonderful. Well, how can people like support what you're doing? Is there a place where anybody can support you or help you in any way in this endeavor?
With the ball and the cross in particular.
Particularly, yeah.
You know, it's a good question. I think at some point that might be the case. I think right now, I'll welcome any prayers that anyone anyone wants to offer up for
Perfect.
this project. In the meantime, as I mentioned, it's all about just the right timing with these
Yeah.
things. Interestingly, it's a project that I think because it is trying to do something different. So sometimes those are the harder projects to get made.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like it actually would have a pretty broad appeal, beyond Chesterton's audience, because it is, again, the story is sort of I think it would play quite broadly,
Mm-hmm.
just even conceptually the idea. So um, I will. I'll do my best to keep you guys informed about
Wonderful.
the progress. But hopefully the time is coming when this project will be a reality.
Yeah, it will be a fine day. People are getting tired, I think, of the silliness, not silliness in a good way, but silliness in a bad, the sort of like lies we're being fed, I think. And it seems like a project like this could, like we've said before, could be very useful and helpful, and maybe, I don't know, shake some people into sanity.
Yeah, well, and the fact that it uses humor to do that, I
Mm-hmm.
think, is what's refreshing about it. That it's not
Yeah.
this sort of polemic, this sort of heavy-handed, polemic. It's it is the truth that's being conveyed is conveyed in a very entertaining and silly way.
Mm.
That is, very very Chestertonian. So
Yes.
I think it would be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, you said you adapted the script, but could you tell us a little bit about the writing process and what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge with the book is that, as you mentioned, they're having the bulk of the book is really dedicated to sort of this intellectual debate that's happening. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the irony of the story is that they want to have a physical duel to the death, but they keep getting interrupted, and so they're having this sort of philosophical, intellectual, theological, duel
Mm-hmm.
as they go. It's a lot of dialogue. And so I think that was the biggest challenge of trying to figure out how to make the story, how to make it as active as possible and as
Sure.
physical as possible. And so I think some of the changes that I made, or most of the changes I made, were all in service of that idea of trying to bring, more physical comedy into it. Keep the story moving at a fast pace.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, and then the police in the script are kind of more prominent figures, and so there were some changes like that. But in anytime you do an adaptation, you're certainly trying to sort of retain the spirit of the book, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of Chesterton's writing is in the script. So um, I think I accomplished that. But yeah, I think the biggest challenge was just trying to figure out how to make something that could be sort of viewed as you know uh, primarily an intellectual debate,
Mm-hmm.
and find a way to bring some physicality into it, and some so that was sort of the biggest challenge, I think.
That's funny because it's been a little while since I've read the book, and I know you're right because I remember the parts where there's a lot of talking, but the parts that stick out to me most in my memory are the action parts when they're running away from so and so,
Mm-hmm.
or there's that great scene where they choose not to fight because the guy who's helping them is like just wants to see them fight, and they're like, this isn't
Yeah,
right
yeah.
either. Um,
Morris Wimpy.
yes, Morrison. Such a Dickensian name.
the,
Um,
the the opening of the film is different too,
mm.
and which might be a matter of some debate. But obviously the way the novel opens is just wild,
Yeah.
the flying ship and all of that. So
Yes. Yeah.
I felt like it might be a little too much in the film. So it's that aspect of it is woven into the film, but the opening is a little different.
Yeah, I could see that making sense. But, somebody will disagree, but that's okay.
Take it to the message boards.
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
absolutely. And talk about it a lot because that'll make it more popular. Um,
exactly.
uh, great. Well, since we still have some time, could you tell me a little bit about your writing? How did you come to start to write? And especially, of course, the stuff about Chesterton, but your books on the Psalms as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a book nerd. I'm sitting in my home office library right now. You're seeing a very small section of my bookshelves, but um, we built this house 3 years ago,
Mm,
and at the top of my wish list was a proper office library. So um, I I buy a lot more books than I read, is the honest truth.
sure.
And I think everybody who loves books, that's probably true of them too. But um, you know, I've always loved the written word. But I never thought I would write books. I
Mm,
didn't think I was qualified to do so. A few years ago, a friend of mine, Dan Wilt, and I started sharing. It was kind of an organic process, but he's been sort of a very close friend and spiritual mentor to me.
mm,
I think I shared with Dan a prayer that I'd written that was sort of inspired by a psalm,
mm,
and it was not an attempt at a translation. It was more a poetic rendering of the psalm, which is a little strange because psalms are already kind of these poetic expressions of prayer.
hmm.
But I, for whatever reason, I wrote this in sort of my own kind of private devotional time, and I shared it with Dan, and he thought it was really interesting. And then he wrote one, and we just started sort of sharing these back and forth,
Mm,
and we felt like we might be onto something, and so we put together a little booklet of these prayers, and I think there were maybe 20 or so that we
mm,
shared with friends and family at Christmas. And one friend that we shared it with was Carolyn Weber, who wrote Surprised by Oxford.
mm,
And Carolyn, Carolyn asked if she could sort of forward this on to some publisher friends, and all of a sudden we had two offers for for a book, that would
wow.
collect these prayers, and we ended up doing a deal with Brazos Press, which is an imprint of Baker, and they wanted to do two books. They wanted to do two volumes, which was part of the appeal of their offer. You get
Mm,
a two-book deal from the get-go, which was really nice.
hmm.
So those books are out now to purchase. The first one's called Sheltering Mercy. The second one is called Endless Grace. So
Mm,
the first volume is the first 75, and then the second volume is the back 75.
nice.
Um, we're actually about to turn in a manuscript for another book of prayers based on Proverbs. So that will be sort of the next in the series.
Mm,
Um, so it was a really fulfilling and challenging project, and it's so really happy that those are out in the world. And then last I guess it was last fall, Moody published Winter Fire, and that was sort of a dream project of mine.
mm,
I didn't think anyone would let me do it, um, but I had always wanted to sort of collect all of Chesterton's writings on Christmas, and there's been some, there have been some attempts to do that before, um, like the Spirit of Christmas, but it was years ago, and I don't think that's even in print anymore.
mm,
And I felt like there was more to mine, and Moody very graciously, said, gave me the opportunity to collect all these writings and write this devotional, and it was so much fun. I told
mm.
them I wanted it to be, um, I wanted it to be rich, not just in content, but also in design. I wanted it
Yeah.
to be aesthetically beautiful, and so that was, it was so fulfilling that they sort of caught a vision for that, and put so much time and effort and money into the the final product. It's a really beautiful book.
It is. Yeah.
Full color, full color throughout, and sort of these Victorian era illustrations that we sort of scoured the internet to find all the fair use stuff. But I'm so proud of it. It was really fun. A little challenging because the format was that we would take, like, there'd be daily readings that would be based on a quote by Chesterton, and then I would sort of write commentary on that, which is a little intimidating.
Yes.
but it was also really fun. It was really fun. And then to include, poems and recipes and short stories and essays. And so, again, the fact, and games, the fact that they caught a vision for what this could be, because it is a little strange, but
very Chestertonian.
Very Chestertonian. And so, yeah. And the response has been really wonderful. So I'm, and obviously a book, a Christmas book is something that, like a Christmas movie, you hope that it has a very long life, because every year it kind of has another cycle of finding new readers or new viewers. So that was a really wonderful project for me.
Yeah, and I kind of love that it's so eclectic, because it does give you an opportunity to either read different parts of it or try different recipes, through the years, and that gives it a longer shelf life. And I love that. I think that's great. Yeah. I did have something to say. Oh, yeah. So, and I also love that, I don't know if you knew this, you probably found this out as you were collecting for this book, but the Chestertons, both of them, would write poems for their Christmas card every year.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a sort of a really cool thing that you sent your poems out for Christmas. I love that. That's so Chestertonian.
Well, one of the amazing surprises in writing Winter Fire was realizing just how much Chesterton wrote about Christmas. It was, I found so much more than I even expected to. So it's kind of incredible. I mean, he wrote so much he wrote about so many subjects, but his writings about Christmas, I think, are just really special.
Yeah, I think he and his wife both were kind of obsessed with Christmas, but I'm glad of it, because I think some of his best writing is his Christmas poetry. I think A Child is Born is probably my favorite of all his poems.
The Wise Men.
Yes, so good. The Donkey. Like, there's so many good Christmas poems that he wrote, and they can get missed. So it's nice to see them so beautifully collected all in one place. Thank you for that.
Oh gosh, you're welcome. It was a joy.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll be a joy for people for many, many years to come. Wonderful. Well, where can people find your books? I think we have Winter Fire in the store. If we do, at the Chesterton website. If we do, we'll link it. But yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the books are available at all the usual places. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You shouldn't have trouble finding them. In fact, I think Dan told me that I think the prayer books are on sale on Amazon right now. So it's a good time to pick those up. You can buy them individually, or there's a box set.
Cool. Great. Nice. Well, we are kind of coming up against our time here. Is there anything else you would like to talk about, to say? Any advice to young creatives? Anything you'd want to share?
Oh gosh, where do I begin? I don't feel very qualified to do what I do. So it's a gift to get to do any of this. I think my greatest advice is just do your best work. Just try to strive for excellence in everything that you do, and opportunities will come to you, I think, if you're doing great work.
Lovely, wonderful. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. So thank you so much, Ryan. It's been really great to talk to you, and please keep up the good work. So much wonderful things you're putting out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for listening and watching. It's been great to share this with you. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, leave us a comment, teach YouTube that we need to share with more people, because as we know, Chesterton is always better with friends. Thank you, and God bless.